Just as the White Knight was about to fight the fearsome dragon, the arrogant player decided to skip the tutorial, rushing headfirst into the game, when suddenly the young man began to fall as the system asked him about creating his character. The distracted player rushed to finish his avatar, as he had to finalize it with a permanent name, and after his first idea was rejected by the system, the player settled for the name Piercing River. And so the young man fell like a meteorite into the novice village. Just like that, the man landed safely but in flames with his destroyed clothes. Upon landing, the protagonist noticed an old man ready to give him his first task. The young man politely proposed assistance to the old man, but was found unworthy of the quest. This made the young man grow angry as the quest giver was underestimating him. So, in order for him to prove his worth, the old man tasked him with killing some slimes at the entrance of the village. The smiling creatures looked rather weak and harmless, and so our hero immediately accepted his mission of difficulty level D. Piercing River would now try to kill a slime in order to prove his worth. With that, the young man summoned his stick, the only item currently present in his inventory, and used it to smack the monster with all his strength, dealing 5 points of damage. Piercing River was surprised by his mediocre damage that only amounted to the slime's anger. The angry monster decided to counterattack, dealing an astonishing 50 points of damage to the young man, leaving him in pain as it knocked him back. Piercing River was amazed by the great difference in firepower between him and the mere monster, and so the young man judged it wise to run away from the angry slime. Once in the village, the young man decided to check his stats, thinking that he was the victim of a bug. But after carefully checking, the protagonist realized that he truly was unable to defeat a slime with his poor stats and skills. Piercing River wanted to find a quick solution to his problem before the other players finished watching the opening animation and started the game. But he suddenly spotted something. The protagonist noticed a novice village's soldier that seemed above level 5. Piercing River politely asked the man for assistance, but the soldier immediately declined. The astonished young man was surprised to see the soldier reacting like the elder, making him wonder if all the inhabitants of the novice village were so unfriendly. The soldier stated that adventurers would have to figure out how to vanquish the slimes on their own, and that he would not help Piercing River if 10 gold coins were proposed to him. But the player quickly grasped the situation, stating that he was the only adventurer in sight, and so the protagonist offered to pay 1 gold coin to take it or leave it. The soldier then recalled the village chief asking them to raise their prices since the players would soon arrive, yet only one that proposed to pay double his salary was in sight, and so he called Piercing River back, as he decided to accept his offer. This made the protagonist crack a devilish smile, and so Piercing River asked the soldier to teach him everything that he knows. With that, he learned the D-rank basic swordsmanship and C-rank basic combo from the village soldier, Karo. The first, which was most efficient with swords and half as powerful with other weapons, had room to improve, while the second was a tunic combo with a small cooldown that dealt great damage. After that, the village soldier finally caught his breath, and immediately demanded his payment from the young adventurer as promised. But Piercing River, who had just spawned into this world, lacked the funds to honor the deal and stated that he would fulfill it once he had the resources to do so. The soldier then burst out with anger, thinking that the protagonist was playing him for a fool, but Piercing River assured him that he didn't have the money. So Kara stated that they should make a contract stating that he would have the right to kill the player if he didn't receive his payment within a week. And with a smiling face, Piercing River proposed another gold coin in exchange for the soldier's gear. After some time, the protagonist was able to acquire the equipment after relentless convincing. With that, he acquired a sword and armor from the white rank, which was the weakest of all, followed by bronze, silver, gold, dark gold, spirit, earth, and heaven rank in that order. And so the young man had optimized both his defense and offense, and with that decided to face the slimes once again, when suddenly a thunderstorm appeared. Something began to descend from the sky. All the players arrived at the novice village. Piercing River was surprised to see how smoothly those who watched the opening animation landed in the village, unlike him. And so the young man rushed to the outside of the village to grab the opportunities ahead. Piercing River was once again face to face with the slimes, as he decided to use his basic combo on one of them, dealing 28 points of damage. The young man was happy with his optimized damage. Suddenly, the angry slime attacked the player, dealing 12 points of damage. Piercing River was also happy with his improved defense, before dealing a lethal blow to the slime, killing his first monster in the game, which made him acquire 10 EXP. Piercing River was amazed by the last slash that dealt 66 points of damage to the slime, making him overjoyed by the skill and gear efficiency. And so the young man began to slash through the blue monsters. With that, our hero finally reached level 2, which increased his stats. Being happy with this result, Piercing River decided to keep on farming. After 2 hours, the players started to complain about the difficulty of taking down a single slime. This made the old man look down on them for their incompetence when someone called him. It was none other than the proud Piercing River, who successfully completed the task bestowed upon him. He then threw his bag on the ground, revealing an impressive amount of slime cores. Yet the village chief remained unimpressed, And so the annoyed protagonist, who completed his first mission, asked for other tasks to fulfill. With that, the old man challenged the beginner adventurer to slay the 10 great demon gods. The SSS rank mission consisted of killing the 10 strongest of the dark faction within a week to obtain a great reward, but Piercing River would have to pay 1,000 gold coins in case of failure. The protagonist was outraged by this ridiculous mission that should be completed within 1 week, seeing how the previous one was just about killing slimes. This made the chief of the village compare the young man to the other incompetent players. Piercing River thought about it for a little while before accepting this impossible mission. The protagonist also stated that the old man should give him the heirloom first, seeing how painful failing this mission would be. And so the old man handed him a scroll with a big smile as he praised his cleverness and wisdom. But in reality, it was all part of the village chief's plan to earn a huge profit regardless of Piercing River, who would be hunted by the Light faction as he lost many prestige points. And so, upon starting the mission, the protagonist received the S-rank tool Rage of the Fire God that would inflict 5 million points of damage within a 200-meter radius upon destroying the scroll. After that, in the forest, the level 5 monster known as Grey Wolf charged with bloodlust in his eyes and inflicted 103 points of damage to the player upon biting him. But the protagonist quickly counterattacked before dealing the final strike, and after obtaining 80 EXP by slaying the common monster, the young man reached level 4, boosting his stats once again. His victory over the Grey Wolf also granted him a mere 3 bronze coins. Seeing how useless the scroll was and how the time limit seemed impossible with his growing speed, the young man began to think of abandoning his account. But to his horror, the system informed him that abandoning the account right now would convert his in-game debt into an actual one amounting to $5,900,000. When suddenly he was spotted by a pack of Grey Wolves as he tried to keep a cool head. Seeing how he was at a disadvantage, the hero decided to run with his tail between his legs. And so the young man hid behind a bush, ready to ambush a lone wolf, before quickly charging at the monster and finishing him off. Piercing River was sure and certain that no one would hear his praise cry for help. 2 hours had passed and the protagonist was able to slay multiple wolves. To his surprise, he reached level 7 and earned the wolf skin wrist guard that granted him 2 points of defense, when suddenly the young man spotted something nearby. The powerful bronze rank boss Demonic Wolf King, who was also the bodyguard of a necromancer, had appeared. Piercing River was amazed by the beast's incredible health and thought of retreating in order to face it once stronger. But after thinking carefully, he realized that engaging the bronze rank boss would allow him to keep a head start on the other players. And so the protagonist charged headfirst at the beast. But the evolved hound immediately spotted the man and prepared to intercept its scrawny attacker. Piercing River tried to dodge the attack, but the monster's claws ended up reaching him, causing a loss of 219 points of health. At this moment, the protagonist realized the enormous gap between his firepower and the werewolves, and so the mighty beast charged once again. But our hero was surprised to see a Grey Wolf attacking him from behind. The hound's bite dealt 78 points of damage, leaving Piercing River in great pain, when suddenly he grabbed the beast by its neck and used the poor creature as a meat shield. This maneuver shocked the Wolf King, who found himself unable to hurt or harm his own kin. It turns out that the clever protagonist was well aware of the wolf's morals and so used the smaller beast as a shield while unchaining a combo on its king. The boss found himself in a difficult situation and so tried to take the young man by surprise. But once again, the regular Grey Wolf was used as an obstacle in his way. With that, the main character kept on attacking while staying away from harm's way. 2 hours had now passed and the Wolf King began to transform as its health was cut in half, making Piercing River fear the worst. He was worried that the powerful Wolf King was going through an advancement that would allow even a common monster to gain more power, and the bosses had a better chance of reaching it. And so with a violent aura, the demonic Wolf King used the skill Bloodlust, greatly boosting its speed and offensive power at the price of losing 0.2% HP per minute as time went by. As the young man was left in awe by the small price the wolf had to pay, it activated its skill, Wolf King Intimidation, dampening the player's attack and movement speed for 30 seconds. With that, the Wolf King charged headfirst and took out the Grey Wolf that Piercing River was using as a shield. The young man couldn't believe that the Wolf King used his skill Rendering Claw to annihilate his own kin in one blow. Yet this action resulted in it being unable to move for 5 seconds due to overwhelming sadness. So the young man took the opportunity and attacked relentlessly. But just when 5 seconds had passed, the demonic Wolf King used his mighty claws and dealt 310 points of damage to the player. The young man couldn't believe that one attack from the evolved hound was enough to almost finish him off. Seeing this, he decided to run away, thinking that he could outrun the mighty beast. But the boss quickly caught up with him. So Piercing River quickly dodged the lethal claws and struck the monster's stomach with his sword. Piercing River started to think that the only way to kill the beast was to let its own debuff consume it. but he would have to take extreme caution since one hit from the demonic Wolf King would result in his demise, and so he activated his basic swordsmanship. 5 hours had now passed, and Piercing River managed to deal a finishing blow to the boss that had lost most of its health. Finally, Piercing River was able to kill his first boss, the demonic Wolf King, earning him 2,000 EXP and 500 points of prestige. And so the young man quickly reached level 10, and as the first in-game to defeat a boss, he received many rewards and decided to announce his feat as a way to receive more prestige. And all were in awe of his victory, seeing how most of them were still fighting their slimes. This made Piercing River's notifications flood with friend requests, so the young man made sure to reject them all since he didn't want to befriend anyone. With that being settled, the first player went to check what he gained from the dying boss, when suddenly someone came up to him asking about the wolf's killer. This person was none other than a necromancer with an unknown level. Seeing that the guilty one was nothing but an adventurer, the dark magician decided to finish what his demonic Wolf King puppet couldn't. Piercing River recognized the spellcaster as the one mentioned in the demonic wolf's description, sensing the might of this foe. Yet the protagonist still had a card up his sleeve. The necromancer was on the verge of reaching the spirit rank, and so he stated that there was no point in the beginner resisting his fate. Yet the young man seemed unimpressed by the high rank of the magician. This made the necromancer, who was fully capable of terminating the adventurer despite his injuries, think of him as a fool since he wasn't afraid of death, seeing how he could respawn. Piercing River then praised the High Mage for knowing about his immortality before asking him for one last favor before killing him off. This intrigued the Dark Spellcaster. Piercing River wanted to look at the information panel of the Dark Gold rank Necromancer, but seeing how bad his concealed condition actually was, the wizard began to panic and decided to terminate the young man right away. So Piercing River showed him the heirloom given to him by the old man. The Necromancer was left in shock upon seeing such a powerful weapon in the hands of a beginner. The protagonist took advantage of the situation to threaten the Dark Magician. Piercing River tried to flip the situation and mump the man, yet the Necromancer was well aware that the young man wanted to see if the scroll would be enough to finish him off. And so the magician dared the young man to take the gamble and try to kill him, thinking that he wouldn't be bold enough to do so. But the protagonist boldly affirmed that it wouldn't matter since he would come back to life. And so he began to tear down the forbidden curse scroll in front of the Necromancer, whose condition made him too weak to survive this powerful attack, when suddenly he asked him to stop. The Dark Magician wanted to make a deal with the young man as he was afraid for his own life. In exchange for sparing his life, the Necromancer would have to give him everything valuable that he had on him. Piercing River was impressed by the NPC's intelligence, but according to the injured man, the rules of the game forbade such transactions for free. This made the player feel weird when the character mentioned the game rules. Daniel, the Necromancer, proposed to make the young man his pupil as he invited him to the Dark Faction, making him a traitor to his original side and activating the Dark Prestige system. Piercing River was surprised to receive such an unexpected offer, but the young man didn't believe a word the man said, stating that he just wanted to drag him into his mess and refused to abandon his well-balanced profession of warrior to join him. So the mage vowed that he would do his best as a mentor and give him the hidden profession Dark Swordsman, and if he dared to break his word, he would be punished by the God of Vows. Piercing River was amazed to see that the hidden profession was far superior to his current one, and with this much stats, 1 point of attack would cause 10 points of damage. The young man began to imagine himself embracing the role and grew fond of this weird idea. And so, with a cheerful smile, the first player agreed to have Daniel, the Necromancer, as his teacher. With that, our hero became part of the Dark Faction as a Dark Swordsman, activating the Dark Prestige system and stripping him of his light privilege as he began his transformation. And basic swordsmanship and combo were turned into Dark Swordsmanship and Hysterical Killing Strike. Being the first player to change his profession, the system rewarded him with stat points, fame points, and the rare item Ring of the Undead. Piercing River wondered if he could regain his human form, but the Dark Magician reassured him that he would regain his human form once he gained more power and mastered his evil aura. So he decided to help him conceal his demonic form until then. With that, the young man would keep his human form for 3 days, yet the Dark Mage couldn't help but notice how troubled his pupil was. Piercing River began to complain about his master being a mere Dark Gold ranked Necromancer, which meant that his future didn't look so bright. This arrogant claim annoyed Daniel, so he stated that since the Dark Faction had great respect for power, his pupil could become a disciple of one of the Dark Gods if he showed promise, filling the young man with excitement. As he mocked his student's name, the teacher stated that his pupil had to take a test in order to prove his newfound loyalty, in which he had to kill 100 players. The protagonist found this task too difficult, so the master stated that given his status as his disciple and his new profession, he should be more than able to complete the task ahead. Daniel then went on his way as he stated that he needed 3 days to recover from his injuries and asked the young man to pass the test in order to exit the novice village. But the protagonist was more curious about what would happen to his spawn point now that he was labeled as a traitor. With a smile on his face, the Necromancer stated that his newfound student must have lost the grace of the god that he betrayed. The young man couldn't believe his own eyes. But his mentor reassured him that he would now be under the grace of the ancient demon god after betraying the divinity of life, which intrigued the young man. So the mentor claimed that more detail would be revealed as he progresses in his journey, stating that he would surely surpass him with his profession as they bid farewell. In the end, the protagonist was happy with the dark faction and its advantages. Piercing River quickly put his new thing on enhancing his stats as his first two skills were upgraded by the dark power. The protagonist decided to test his newfound powers on the nearby gray wolves as he collected more equipment. With that, he began to attack the hounds, and so he acquired the wolf skin soft cap. Piercing River now had complete gear and decided to sell the spare parts for profit in the novice village, when suddenly a mysterious man pushed him away. He was surprised to see many players attacking the gray-haired wolf. One of the players declared the area as the property of the Alliance of Heroes as he tried to make him go away. But the hero found it revolting seeing how he was there first and claimed that it would be unfair for solo players if guilds began to claim places. Yet the man didn't want to hear it and insisted that the place now belonged to them. Seeing this, the young man decided to fight the Alliance of Heroes in order to protect his rights. With that, the young man began to record the fight as the other players attacked him. But to their surprise, their blades barely damaged the solo player, and with one swing, he killed the two players with ease. The young man was amazed by his new dark powers, seeing how normal players were easily squashed by him. He was even more amazed to see that eliminating other adventurers now granted him EXP. Seeing how their own were easily killed, they all charged at once. But little did they know, that's what the Dark Swordsman was waiting for, and so began his carnage. Piercing River now possessed great speed and then combined it with his blade in order to split one of the players in half. Just like that, many players were quickly eliminated. The last one of them couldn't believe what he had just witnessed. Piercing River jokingly stated that his 17th kill was left speechless by his handsomeness. As he finished recording, the young man affirmed that the Alliance of Heroes were the ones who started it. Later that night, the protagonist returned to the village in order to make a profit out of his spare equipment. And so he proposed his Grey Wolf's equipment in exchange for real money. The players recognized him as Piercing River, the strongest player in the game, and recognized his common articles as rare, seeing how the game was newly launched. With that, they started to make their offers, but the protagonist affirmed that he would only sell to the highest bidder. A man called Soaring Dragon proposed $10,000 for each item the young man had in stock as he invited the hero to join him in the Dragon Clan Guild. But the first player insisted on staying a solo player in order to mask his identity as a dark faction member. The man proposed to add the protagonist as a friend so he could turn to their guild first when selling items, but was later surprised to discover that the merchant was, in fact, the first player. And so the two players made a successful trade. After that, in the real world, the young man finally took off his VR headset. The protagonist sighed. He was able to successfully sell his goods for $40,000. With that, he decided to upload the video of him terminating the Alliance of Heroes. Upon upload, the comment sections were flooded with people arguing about the video. The employee informed the guild leader that they were being provoked by the Dark Swordsman in the comment section. This made the man in the chair quite angry. Piercing River was daring them to face him. The man stated that the solo player was overconfident for challenging an entire guild on his own. And so the head of the Alliance of Heroes decided to use all his available numbers to take the young man down and even ordered new players to be recruited to join their guild. The angry man also added a reward of $50,000 for every time Piercing River kicks the bucket, no matter how many times he dies. This made the employee think that his boss was overdoing it, yet the man affirmed that the game was a big business opportunity, which is why they should be bold and think as such. The assistant assumed that his boss needed 20 more men, yet the greedy one wanted to bring fame to his guild, which is why he requested 100 men to defeat the game's best player. Later on, they were able to find the targeted player. This made the protagonist, who was eager for EXP, blood boil. And so the men charged all at once, aiming for the immense bounty on the young man's head. But little did they know Piercing River was looking forward to demonstrating his dark powers. And so 4 men charged all at once, before suddenly disappearing. An evil smile cracked on the young man's face, as he mercilessly killed 2 players with ease. Seeing this, the regular players finally understood why the reward was set so high, which discouraged them since their levels would drop each time they respawned. But the guildmaster encouraged the troops by reminding them of their numbers and also that you would drop a lot of items once dead, seeing how many he killed due to sin value. Piercing River affirmed that he didn't know if his sin value increased, but his EXP bar sure did, and so he dared them to attack him one after the other. Since Eternal Heaven was a new game, most players were still level 2 and were pretty weak, seeing how none of them had even changed professions, making them easy to farm. A crazed look filled the young man's eyes as he began to tear through the enemy numbers. This made one of the men question the hero's sanity. Players tried to stab him, yet only dealt 1 point of damage. This minimal firepower amused the protagonist. 20 minutes had passed, and the players of the Alliance of Heroes were happy to see the Dark Swordsman's HP bar almost empty, which boosted their morale. but their celebrations were cut short when Piercing River's health was restored as he reached level 11. All looked disappointed and wondered why he leveled up by slaughtering them. So the guildmaster claimed that the young man must have used the rewards he earned by slaying the demonic Wolf King, and claimed that their numbers were enough to finish him. With that, the Alliance of Heroes attacked the young man once again, thinking that a special item caused him to level up. These empty, self-comforting explanations greatly amused our protagonist, and so he kept on fighting, being 26 kills away from passing his loyalty test to the Dark faction. And finally, after 15 minutes, the Dark Swordsman killed his 100th player, granting him the acknowledgement of his new faction. Piercing River was happy to have passed the test, yet the young man insisted on keeping the fight as it was a good way of farming. Despite that, the guildmaster was not discouraged, yet was still impressed by Piercing River, who kept his dynamic energy despite fighting their immense numbers. And after 5 minutes, the hero's health was once again almost empty, renewing the player's morale. Yet the protagonist kept his smile on his face as he reached level 12 and restored his health bar once again. Piercing River, with his demonic smile, couldn't help but enjoy the ongoing slaughter. The Alliance of Heroes were left confused as the young man kept on evolving while fighting them. The protagonist then taunted his foes to run away while he broadcast this fight and risked losing their reputation. This situation made the guild master panic as he assumed that the hero was still feeding on the reward of a bronze rank boss. Seeing how desperate the situation was, the head of the Alliance of Heroes had no choice but to order a retreat. With that, the men ran with their tails between their legs. Piercing River took his opportunity to keep the weapons that were left behind for himself. The protagonist was happy with the outcome of this battle, seeing how he was able to jump from level 10 to level 12. And since his sin value was still 0, he assumed that eliminating players from the opposing faction would not affect it. When suddenly, Piercing River received an urgent message. The system notified him that his master Daniel was on the verge of being killed, and that if he died, he would lose 50,000 Dark faction prestige points. Not wanting to rot in the novice village forever, the young man rushed to save the one that would get him out of there, and ran as fast as he could. Daniel the Necromancer was cornered against the wall. The old man wanted to kill the Dark Mage with a high bounty in order to enter the Light Vatican and expand his knowledge. The Light Mage revealed that he spent a long time tracking the Necromancer. Yet the cornered Daniel stated that their fight's outcome was still unknown, as he affirmed that the spirit rank old man didn't scare him. When suddenly, both spellcasters noticed something coming their way. It was no other than Piercing River. The old man was surprised to see the adventurer. Our protagonist also recognized the Light Mage as the mysterious leader of the novice village. Piercing River then compared the Pyromancer to his master, seeing how his powers were shrouded in mystery. The Flamecaster was surprised to sense dark power from the young man, fearing that he had changed factions. Seeing this, the old man decided to terminate the master and drag the pupil to the Light Vatican, which would surely grant him the title of its envoy. Piercing River asked his teacher if they could beat the old man, but the Necromancer sarcastically claimed that his small chances of victory were all blown up by his pupil's arrival, and claimed that their only escape was for Piercing River to distract the Pyromancer while he used the teleportation spell that would take more than 20 seconds to cast. The hero found his teacher cruel for forcing him to use his most valuable weapon for his own sake before asking his master to give him something. Piercing River only agreed to help his mentor if he was given the task as a mission with a generous reward at the end. This irony left the Dark Mage annoyed. With that settled, the young man was now ready to face the old Pyromancer. Seeing how the two of them devised a plan in front of him, the old man was left triggered. Piercing River then threatened the man with the very scroll he gave him. The angry Pyromancer, who began to regret his choice, then reminded the kid that he was the original owner of the scroll and that there was no way it could affect him. As he tore down the scroll, the young man stated that this item was a gift from an old man who dreamed of the defeat of the demon gods like the Pyromancer. With that, the power of the curse was unleashed, hitting the old mage, who struggled to tank such a powerful spell. But just then, the teleportation circle was ready as the Necromancer activated it, and so Piercing River disappeared along with his master. Shortly after that, the system notified the players of the protagonist's betrayal and informed them that anyone who could kill him would obtain rare items and unlock a hidden profession. A light appeared out of nowhere, and the little bunny couldn't believe his eyes as teacher and student appeared on the map known as Blue Wind Plains. But just then, the young man was informed that his betrayal had become known to the public. He was sure and certain that players would come after him, seeing how big the reward would be for killing him. Having left the village, he had ruptured his deal with the soldier, which meant that he would be hunted by him. And since he attacked the old man, he would suffer the failure of their deal. And so the young man was stripped of his precious coins as his level dropped to 1. Seeing this, he angrily went to claim his reward from his teacher. So the Necromancer affirmed that he would surely be rewarded for being his student and savior, because upon completing his mission, Piercing River received 100,000 EXP and the S-rank skill known as Vicious Trample. And so the player's level, which was reset to 1, began to rise exponentially and finally reached level 14. The young man was thrilled to have unlocked a rare talent as well. The S-rank evil trampling is a well-known skill on the continent proper to evil beings that would attack the target and its dignity twice as the user concentrates his power within his feet. Even though humiliating skill was pretty weak, Piercing River couldn't help but find it very convenient. It was lost in time, yet the necromancer acquired it by luck, but since he was a mage with a weak physique, he decided to gift the talent to his young student as it would help him within the faction. This intrigued the young protagonist as the talent was weak and independent of weapons, so the master explained that even the strongest of their kin wished to acquire his evil trampling. Seeing this, the greedy young man was left happy as he asked for more rewards, which pissed off his master, thinking that he wanted compensation for his used forbidden scroll. Yet Piercing River affirmed that he just wanted to become stronger. With that, the master stated that his pupil should train in order to do so regardless of weapons, and so he decided to take him somewhere safer as these planes didn't belong to any faction. The necromancer was left weakened, which made him seek a place under the demon god's protection. And after an hour, master and student arrived at the barren lands. Piercing River watched as his teacher struggled to move. The dark mage explained that he needed 2 days of rest since he had almost recovered before giving medicine to his pupil, as he explained that the monsters here were perfect for training. With that, the young man thanked his teacher for this gift that would help him recover 500 HP every 10 seconds. And so Piercing River accepted the C-rank mission given to him by Daniel to kill 500 demonic lizards. After some time, the protagonist found his level 18 prey, which was highlighted by its bad temper. The demonic lizards were far stronger than the wolf boss that our hero had to face before, but since he had grown stronger, he assumed that he would be okay if he attacked small numbers. With that, the protagonist began to emit a dark aura, before quickly charging at the demonic lizard, ready to take the reptile's life. And with one use of evil trampling, the hero dealt 1869 points of damage to the creature and immobilized it for 2 seconds. After that, the young man unleashed a barrage of sword slashes on the demonic reptile. Seeing this, the monster tried to counterattack, and bit the young man's leg, dealing 402 points of damage. Yet the smiling Piercing River remained unfazed by the damage, before killing his first demonic lizard and earning 500 EXP points and checking his profile, when he was suddenly attacked by a swarm of demonic lizards. Seeing this, the young man decided that it would be safer to create some distance between him and the monsters. And after a few minutes, the protagonist managed to slay all the beasts, when he suddenly received a call from dragons soaring 10,000 miles. He then informed the protagonist that many players were looking for a way to kill him, as the young man picked the small amount of money dropped by the monsters, when suddenly the man proposed to the protagonist to sell his account. This made the young man speculate that this might be a trap to kill him, and that his account would disappear once he was killed, which made him immediately refuse. Yet the young man's attention was quickly caught by a lucrative offer made to him. 20 million was an incredible amount worth destroying his account for, as it would make him rich. Yet the greedy one wanted more, and so he declined once again as the punishment was far too great. The man then stated that there was a huge bounty on the hero's head, stating that once they eliminated him, he would lose his benefits. So Piercing River decided to remind the man why he had a huge bounty on his head in the first place, and with that, the man decided to end the call. But just then, our hero proposed to sell the man some equipment. The man agreed and bought them for 30,000. The protagonist found the price reasonable and accepted it, stating that the man should send one of his friends to pick up the merchandise, but that he would have to pay in advance. Hearing this, the man agreed and hung up, leaving the merchant to slay demonic lizards until the middleman arrived. And so our hero charged forward, spending his time killing the devilish reptiles. When he finally leveled up, reaching level 15. Suddenly, his human disguise wore off upon leveling up, awakening his job class's power as he gained the talent known as the Power of Death. This new passive would allow the Dark Swordsman to heal 1,000th of his life per second in battle and 0.5% while resting, which made the ambitious player happy. And having received the price of the sold equipment, the young man gave the buyer the hidden location of the merchandise. In this game, when white tier equipment is hidden, it would lose its owner within a day, while bronze takes 3 days and silver 7, as stated by the system as a reminder. With that being settled, the young man returned to his animal cruelty, and after an hour, the protagonist managed to slay 93 demonic lizards. Piercing River was happy to see the dying creature drop a piece of equipment. The Dark Swordsman had acquired the Sand Tier Sandy Boots, the ideal pair for desert adventures, yet they required their user to be at least level 16 in order to wear them. Seeing this, the young man decided to keep playing and level up when he was suddenly stopped. A voice from the real world stated that the hero didn't show such dedication even when studying for his college admission test, before asking him to stop the game in order to eat. Meanwhile, in the real world, a man apologized for underestimating the protagonist who was able to defeat 100 players on his own. He then assumed responsibility in front of Tu for this grand failure. Yet Tu affirmed that it's not the man's fault since he was directing solo players that wouldn't listen to him and asked him to carry on his work. And so the man politely excused himself. But Tu, once alone, expressed his frustration and swore that the young man would be constantly hunted by swarms of players. After that, in eternal heaven, Piercing River finally logged back in, when he was suddenly greeted by the swing of a tail, sending him flying away while dealing 10 points of damage. This surprise attack annoyed the young man. He was now facing the Bronze Tier boss known as Demonic Lizard King, a ruthless slayer. Since his opponent was a mere Bronze Tier boss, the hero was certain he could kill it, and so he charged headfirst at the Demonic Lizard King. The protagonist immediately used Evil Trampling, dealing 1,073 points of damage to the Bronze Tier boss and immobilizing him for a fraction of a second. Piercing River was surprised and disappointed by his attack's mere results, when suddenly the vile reptile began to emit a green energy. This made him a victim of the Lizard King's poisonous skin, which would make him lose 500 HP in 10 seconds. The protagonist had to resort to the medicine given to him by his master, and so the young one charged once again, dealing 575 points of damage to the boss upon hitting him on the head before trying to slice it up with his dark blade, leaving the monster in great pain. Seeing this, the Demonic Lizard King decided to counterattack, trying to smash his opponent with a swing of his tail, but the player managed to easily cut it off. The crazed young man was determined to take revenge on the giant reptile, and after a few minutes, Piercing River finally managed to slay the level 20 Bronze Tier boss. The dying boss dropped a large number of silver coins, which made the player excited about the equipment that he must have acquired. The young man couldn't believe his eyes as he had acquired the Bronze Tier Yellowstone armor, which was ideal for ambushes in the desert, and the demon's stone staff, which was considered a treasure among new magicians. Seeing how the armor had a high-level requirement and how the staff was rendered useless since he was a swordsman, our hero decided to sell his reward. But the man argued that the required level was too high for everyone in the guild, yet the protagonist managed to convince him otherwise. In the end, the man offered him 50,000 since it was just early game equipment, which the seller gladly accepted, asking to send someone to pick it up. Piercing River looked forward to the fortune that Eternity had to offer him, seeing how he was able to make 100,000 in such a short time so early. He then decided to slay some demonic lizards in order to complete the mission given to him by the Dark Magician. And so he began to kill the demonic beasts one after the other, until he finally reached level 16, which meant that he could now use the boots that he got earlier. The player's avatar now had almost complete equipment. Shortly after, in the real world, our hungry hero decided to order some food when he suddenly received a text from someone called Wang Kai. Seeing how his old close friend from university was making fun of him as usual, he asked him to meet at their regular spot. And so our hero made his way into the vast city before seeing someone waving at him. Wang Kai, who was happy to see him, immediately offered a job to his old friend. Our protagonist was offered to become a professional player. He explained how Han's great skills should be put to good use and how he could introduce him to the studio he's been working with, which was planning to make a big impact in Eternity. But the protagonist immediately declined. This made Wang Kai think that Han didn't trust him, so he assured him that he would never stab him in the back before explaining that he would receive a generous salary of $1,123 a month. He then added how the gamer's talent would easily earn him 10,000 yuan with ease. So the protagonist clarified, stating that he didn't want to work for or with someone. This intrigued Wang Kai, which finally made him realize that his old friend was already playing Eternity. Han expressed how incredibly realistic the game's graphics were, earning it the title of Second World, which was too tempting to resist. Wang Kai immediately asked for his username in order to add him to his friend list, but Piercing River insisted on keeping it secret. It would be safer this way since every player in the game was trying to kill him. This made the young man speculate that his old pal was wanted in the Second World. Wang Kai then suddenly remembered something. He shared with his friend a secret that once a player reaches a certain level in the game, they would unlock access to a secret realm. The unsure Wang Kai explained to Han how the game's creators made it so that the realm would be unlocked after reaching a certain level in order to properly determine the player's skill. Wang Kai only managed to get such precious information because he joined a very influential studio that had its eyes on the game. With that, the young man decided to go back to work. Shortly after, in the barren lands of the Second World, something caught the necromancer's attention. Daniel was surprised to see his pupil return so early. The astonished student, who worked himself to death, immediately asked the dark mage for a reward. This dark magician was particularly nice to his students, and so the pupil was granted 25,000 EXP and the silver tier equipment storage ring. With that, our hero leveled up once again, reaching level 17. Piercing River was quite happy to have received a silver tier equipment from his master. This ring had the ability to increase the user's storage capacity by 20 slots. Our hero then asked his master about talents within the game, which intrigued him. Daniel then stated that it was normal for the player to ask such a question, seeing how he and the others had picked up their talents after some days into the game, intriguing the pupil. He then explained how the players are as strong as the original residents of this world and how they would get an hour to pick up a talent after the trial and leave after finding the right one. Ham was impressed, but Daniel explained that it wasn't enough since he would only find low-level talents like his, which only give him a small chance to get double the medicine he makes. The Necromancer then mentioned a talent within the light faction known as Sword Heart that increased the final damage dealt by a swordsman by 80%. This made the protagonist speculate that this talent was S rank, but the master corrected him, stating that it was S rank, which was considered the peak of eternity. Piercing River wanted to know if there was a rank above S of rank, but his master denied it. There were fewer than 5 people in the whole continent with a talent in this rank, as there were 6 ranks from D to SS. But the master reassured him that he should rest assured, as he had already given him an S rank skill to crush his enemies, though the hero was aware that this also benefited his allies. He then explained that the standard of an original inhabitant was silver tier, but the crucial part was power levels, which is why different people could access the secret realm at different levels. As he grabbed his staff, he declared that more would be revealed once Piercing River becomes stronger. And so, to the student's surprise, the master decided to grant him the blessing of the demon god. After a long wait, our hero would finally receive the so-called blessing that could replace the player's ability to respawn. With that, Daniel the necromancer began to chant the spell, before using it on him. As he regained his evil form, the system informed him that the protection of the demon god would now allow him to gain titles, which disappointed our hero. The system then informed him that he had now gained the title of the Fallen for betraying his original faction, which doubled his final HP. The description of his avatar now indicated his increased life and how his death would be beneficial to the adventurers of the Light faction. He was very pleased with the outcome, comparing himself to a final boss in the game and how the gain HP would double from now on, as he finally realized why bosses have so much of it, since players of the Light faction would be eternally revived and would keep leveling up. The game had to maintain balance by making their rivals harder to eliminate, which is why the protagonists that joined the dark side would be able to level up while being as powerful as a boss. Daniel wanted to know if the power of his demonic deity impressed his young disciple, which he gladly confirmed. Yet the student was concerned, since he and his newly healed master had to find a place to stay, so the dark magician decided to take his student with him. Daniel affirmed to his pupil that he's more important than he looks. Yet the young man found his way of flexing pretty odd, and so our heroes went on their way as they entered the City of Darkness. This Tier 1 city was known as the City of Light, but became part of the Dark faction under the rule of the 10 demon gods, thus also becoming a battlefield since the Light faction wanted it back. The door was open for the city's ruler and his newest disciple. Piercing River was surprised to learn about his master's position, so Daniel explained that he had it for half a year, and because of his title and power, he was able to break through the spirit tier. This shocked the young man, as it meant that the necromancer was in fact a dark gold tier boss originally, yet he was able to become the lord of first tier city. Based on the little data on cities, they should be divided into 5 tiers, from 4-tier villages to super cities, with 1 in each server, and main cities needed an earth tier at least to be conquered. The skeleton soldiers seemed to see their master return. The deputy city's head had also returned, who was in fact a gold tier boss with hidden stats known as the Undead Knight Cantor. Cantor immediately bowed to his lord and master. Yet the Dark Swordsman was confused, as even with Daniel and the Undead Knight, the forces of the Light faction should have been able to make this city the first to meet its doom. The ruler quickly helped his servant get up, thanking him for his hard work. The teacher then introduced his pupil to the undead. Cantor greeted the young man, stating that great potential dwelled in him, judging from his demonic aura. He then stated that the continent had never seen a weak dark swordsman before politely excusing himself. Piercing River seemed to have something on his mind. He wanted to know if the Dark Mage was afraid, since his territory was rather close to the lands of the Light faction. But Daniel bragged about how he didn't fear death, since he was a necromancer. Yet the young man was rather scared for his short life. But the master was well aware of his thoughts and explained that even if they weren't a direct part of the Dark faction, necromancers and their play of the undead were feared by the Elates. This reminded Han of the game he previously played. All the continent feared the undead, and having gotten everything he wanted from the city, Daniel wasn't scared of death, as he now only had to accomplish his one goal. Yet the teacher affirmed that his title wouldn't harm his student in any way, but would rather use it to assist him. The student asked for clarifications. The Dark Mage explained that both the Light and Dark factions were about to enter a legendary battle, which is why he would use the time left and resources to help his pupil train and grow. This realistic behavior made the young man question if his master was a real person or just an NPC. Although Daniel couldn't provide the gear for free, he had other ways to help Piercing River become stronger, like dealing with the dark energy swarm of mice that attacked their soldiers. But the player was left confused, since those corrupted beasts should be a part of the Dark faction. The ruler then explained that wild beasts consumed by demonic energy would become crazy and hostile toward all creatures except their own kin, regardless of their faction. Some knowledge would be useless for Han, which is why he should focus on his power level, and since his class is feared by the enemy, he would lose his ability to grow once he is noticed. With that, our hero began his mission to kill 500 rats or just deal with the source of the problem. But the young man didn't know where to start searching. So he approached a skeleton, asking him for directions. But the offended NPC burst out in anger since Piercing River misgendered her. The astonished young man, who couldn't see the difference, asked her once again using the right pronouns. She shyly explained how the demonic rats could be found to the north of the city and timidly added how they liked to dig inside her body, making her feel sorrow for her lover, leaving the young man speechless. With that, he went on his way, when he suddenly came face to face with the enemy. The level 17 Piercing River stumbled upon an enormous swarm of demonic rats. And to his misfortune, all pests possessed a higher level than him. The hero began to fear the worst, as when he would attack the first rat, the many others would assault him. When they all began to run away, to his surprise, the system informed him that the demonic beasts were terrified of the evil aura dwelling in his body. With that, he began to pursue them, and decided to use his S-tier skill, smashing the ground under their feet to bits. The player discovered that the terrified pests would not dare to harm him, and with that, he began to relentlessly slash them. An hour later, and the young man was still attacking them. And after 2 hours, one of them finally dropped a piece of equipment. Piercing River obtained the bronze-tier black iron wrist guards that had a level 20 requirement, but just then, he was informed that a player had already received their first talent. Just as the player expected, he wasn't the only one dedicated to the game. When suddenly, the earth beneath him began to shake as the system informed him that his carnage drew the attention of the demonic Rat King. The protagonist was now face to face with his first silver-tier boss of an unknown level. The Dark Swordsman was baffled by the monster's stats and speculated that it had a level superior to his. But he was most excited about having the chance to be the first to kill a silver-tier boss, seeing how he didn't get the first talent. The boss was getting ready to attack, and so the demonic Rat King charged at the young man. But our protagonist managed to evade at the last second, before using evil trampling on the Dark Pest King, immobilizing him for a fraction of a second. But the silver-tier boss wasn't done yet, biting Piercing River and almost cutting his life bar in half. As he took his medicine, the Dark Swordsman realized that he wouldn't be able to face the Rat King and his firepower if it wasn't for his title. With that, the young man tightly grabbed his sword before dealing 1105 points of damage to the giant rat. And after an hour of relentless fighting, the young man was able to cut the boss's HP in half. Seeing this, Piercing River readied himself for the boss's talent. Suddenly, the demonic Rat King let out a loud scream. The confused player could feel something coming his way. Demonic rats began to crawl from underground. In an instant, the protagonist found himself surrounded by an immeasurable swarm of demonic pests. Yet all the small beasts were scared of him. Both he and the giant demonic Rat King were surprised by this outcome, due to his evil aura in the silver-tier boss, which angered the young man. And so the player grabbed the monster's tail as it went to the underground, while puncturing him with his sword from behind. The boy and the rat then fell into a cave, where the demonic Rat King began to quickly heal. Piercing River had discovered the source of the corruption. The purple electric gem was radiating with evil aura, a powerful aura that the young man suddenly felt coursing through him. The protagonist couldn't believe the immense power. But he was even more amazed to learn that the light of the purple electric gem enhanced his evil aura, which would make him 10 times stronger for a whole minute. This angered the silver-tier boss, that quickly charged at the young man. But the confident Piercing River charged back, dealing unimaginable points of damage to the demonic Rat King, resulting in the death of the young man's first silver-tier boss and him reaching level 19. And being the first player to slay such a boss, the system rewarded him with 1,000 points of reputation and 20 stat points in addition to the rare item power of favors that left him intrigued. This S-rank scroll would grant him powers similar to a fraction of deities and allow our hero to raise the rank of any B-rank skills or less by one. Piercing River was overjoyed by the marvelous power he acquired. He then accepted to make the news of his achievement public and gained 10,000 reputation points. Piercing River understood that his reputation would be enough to make himself the center of attention of all other players, as the news of his victory left everyone in disbelief and shock. But just as he went to see what equipment the silver-tier boss left behind, he was surprised to learn that his talent trial would debut in less than 5 minutes, leaving him excited and shocked. He then realized that he only had 3 minutes to rate himself. Ham recalled how even if it was mostly a gamble, the trial was the only way for a player to upgrade his talents, and also recalled Daniel mentioning the restriction on gear, not skills. And so he decided to use the power of favors in order to obtain the most favorable talent, when something seemed to have caught his attention. And when asked about the desired skill to upgrade by the system, our hero chose his Dark Sword skill. And so the B-rank skill evolved into the A-rank skill Art of Killing, a talent exclusive to Dark Swordsman with monstrous stats that basically doubled the attack power of the satisfied hero. Piercing River then noticed something on the ground, an A-rank purple electric gem that would increase his power and unleash the hidden power of its user for 1 minute, power determined by the system based on one's level and other factors. The gem was already used 1 time and could only perform 2 more increases. Our hero wished that he could bring this miraculous item with him to the talent trial, As 10 seconds of preparation remained, the young man's teleportation began. The protagonist's trial would be held in a forest where he had to slay an enemy in 10 minutes, and if successful, he would receive a D or C rank talent, and in case of failure, just a D rank talent. As the time began, the Dark Swordsman turned around to find a rabbit sitting behind him. This foe was just a mere level 1 wild rabbit. The baffled young man began to think that the trial talent had an underestimating nature, seeing how the rabbit was even weaker than the slime. But even if his level was reset to 1, it turned out that he was able to bring the 20 free stat points that he received after killing the demonic Rat King. The strategic young man used all of them to improve his attack, and by combining it with his talents, killed the rabbit with a stomp of his feet, ensuring a talent between C and D rank. Suddenly, another adversary appeared, which killing it would guarantee a talent between B and D rank. The undead skeleton looked far more powerful than the wild rabbit. As his level reached level 10, the young man understood that his trial level would always be equal to his foe's level, and so the skeleton charged at the young man. But the quick thinker immediately counterattacked, killing it in one blow. Piercing River was looking forward to the talent that he would get in order to pair it with his rare roll and a rank skill. The next enemy was going to appear. This time, the protagonist would be facing a level 20 demonic wild wolf, a wild beast that immediately charged at him. But as Han's level was set to 20, he was more than confident in defeating such an opponent with ease, seeing how it couldn't begin to compare to the usual boss. Piercing River evaded the attack with ease and punched the demonic wild wolf in the gut. Just like that, the victory of the young man guaranteed him a talent between A and D rank. Han didn't find the trial challenging so far. His next opponent was an armored knight, and so the two men charged at each other before beginning to go blow for blow, where the protagonist managed to secure a hit on the head and enchain with a tempest of fists, granting him victory and the right to a talent between D rank and S rank. Han expected the S rank to be the next in line, but to his surprise, his victory would only grant him access to a talent between S and B rank instead of S and D. This time, his opponent was a level 1 young purple-winged tiger, a dark gold tier boss. The baffled young man understood that his foe was like none he ever faced before in this trial, and even if victorious, he might end up with a D-rank talent since it was mostly a gamble. For this trial, our hero's level would be elevated to 40 and his attack power to 576. And so he implanted his foot into the ground before dashing towards the fantastic beast and punching it in the head. The purple-winged tiger let out a roar, leaving the young man intrigued before falling to its knees. Seeing this, Piercing River bombarded the winged feline with a barrage of fists. Wing was suddenly hit by its attack, Thunderbolt's punishment, inflicting 6,757 points of damage to the player. Yet the protagonist kept on punching until the dark gold tier boss met its end, securing him a talent between B rank and S rank. And as a reward for defeating such a powerful foe, the system rewarded him with 5 extra stat points. This filled the player's heart with joy. He immediately used the reward to enhance his attack power when suddenly water appeared out of nowhere. A god tier boss, the Water Kylan, had made its entrance. Piercing River couldn't believe his eyes. With that, the system raised the player's level to 50. The shocked young man was happy to see that his attack power was restored to its peak due to his A-rank talent that was even able to double it. The protagonist now had to kill a level 1 god-tier boss in under 10 minutes in order to secure a talent between a rank and S rank. This creature was a rare pearl of the sea with great hydromancy, who even in youth is very powerful and once adult becomes divine. Its presence in the trial is enough to impact the outside. There was an immense gap of level between the purple-winged tiger and the Water Kylan, yet it seemed like its stats were pretty weak, just like its talents. Yet the player couldn't identify the monster's last talent, Prohibition Ocean Domain, making him speculate that the level 1 boss could use curses. Suddenly, the Kylan made the first move with a powerful blast that the young man barely avoided, yet he wasn't left unscratched. Han took immense damage from this simple basic attack. The monster then continued by tackling the protagonist to the ground, dealing 4,555 points of damage. The player thought about how he lost so much HP once again to a simple move, when the god-tier boss was getting ready to finish him off. Restrained, the player expected to meet his demise, thinking that he was still lucky to be able to obtain an S-rank talent. But the sore loser wouldn't let it end here and there, and so he decided to spit into the monster's jaws. Grossed out, the Kylan took a few steps away and spat out this odd projectile. Ham was happy to have escaped, but his vulgar action increased the monster's anger towards him exponentially, making it use its talent Prohibition Ocean Domain. The young man couldn't believe his eyes, but just as he expected it to be the end, the evil aura inside him began to glow. By reaching level 50, Piercing River awakened the hidden S-rank skill of the Dark Swordsman known as Dark Reincarnation, and so the evil power inside the young man became out of control. Since being neither alive nor dead, Dark Reincarnation would increase the stats of the battle-thirsty Dark Swordsman by 50% in exchange for dropping 10 levels and a week-long cooldown. For normal players, this skill would require tons of calculation due to the drawbacks, but it was in fact perfect for the Fallen. Since Piercing River could level up but not respawn, losing the game would be like restarting from level 1. And with that, all of his stats were boosted by 50%. As immense evil aura began to shine from him, leaving the Kylan in shock. Shocked, the creature asked the young man about this evil power. The protagonist was surprised to hear the god-tier boss speak, and decided to taunt him by stating that he would tell him if he admitted defeat, angering the young beast. With that, the young man decided to cut straight to the violence, and used evil trampling, immobilizing the beast for 0.5 seconds. But Piercing River wasn't done just yet, and bombarded the legendary creature with powerful punches. The Kylan was surprised to see this young man use a skill supposedly forgotten. The player mockingly responded by stating that he could also breathe underwater. So the determined Kylan used its skill Prohibition Ocean Domain, ensuring that sea monsters would assault his opponent for 3 minutes, which left the baffled player confused. And so he decided to end the fight as soon as possible, when suddenly a water worm attacked him. The bite of the poisonous sea snake inflicted 500 points of damage for 10 seconds. But this effect didn't impress the young player. However, he then suddenly lost 96 HP points as he was grabbed by the leg. So Piercing River shook it off and charged at his toughest trial yet, before riding on the water Kylan's back while punching him and even begging him to die, which the god-tier boss took as an insult. Yet the protagonist kept on mocking and provoking his foe. Seeing the adventurer being this vulgar angered the fantastic beast even more. The player wanted to distract the monster, but instead, it resulted in another powerful attack. When suddenly a voice began to advise the water Kylan known as Jia. Piercing River speculated that it was an inhabitant observing his trial. Thinking that this person had malicious intent, he advised his adversary not to lend him an ear. This form of concern annoyed the Kylan even more. So fearing the worst, the young man jumped off his back and used evil trampling on the beast once again, canceling its skill, sweeping Cold Wave and freezing him for half a second, before attacking without any rest, dropping the monster's health to 20%. Now only a tenth remained, as the protagonist kept punching without any interruption, when the Ocean Domain summoned a giant shark in order to finish him off. But just then did Piercing River land the final punch, and finally defeated the god-tier boss, ensuring himself a talent between A rank and S rank. The excited victor received 10 stat points, as it was now time for him to pick up his talent. The voice then began to compliment the protagonist, stating that it was a shame to see him with the dark faction. But Han affirmed that being a part of the light faction didn't mean that one is a good-hearted being. The inhabitant was left speechless before stating that he and the strong player would eventually meet, making the protagonist wish to meet him as an ally. The system then informed him that it was now time for him to choose his talent that cannot be outgrown and would stay with him for life. Han was annoyed to discover that there was no trial for SS rank talent, when something seemed to have caught his attention. The protagonist found himself in a space full of talent spheres where he had 60 minutes to choose one among them. The curious player grabbed the first talent that increased one's final defense by 20%, called Solid Rock, leaving Han impressed by the A-rank talents. Final defense was different from regular defense, since players with this talent are extremely durable. Yet Piercing River would always favor attack over defense, since even if one had impenetrable armor, he would be unable to protect his teammates, ensuring his defeat when facing a group alone. This is why the protagonist, who relishes offense, dropped the sphere, since Dark Reincarnation, once at 6 stars, would pair perfectly with an offensive talent. The search would be hard since the spheres were many and the time little, and so our hero began to sprint between the different talents. But to his misfortune, all of them were mere A rank. The annoyed player demanded an S rank talent. 20 minutes had passed and all he could find were blue spheres, when he suddenly stumbled upon a golden ball. Han finally found an S-rank talent called Immortality that would restore 0.3% of his health each second during battle and 2% at rest. The young man was left amazed by this talent that would restore his health within a minute. Yet the Dark Swordsman was after offensive power, but he decided to keep the talent with him just in case he ran out of time. 40 minutes had passed and still nothing. 10 minutes were left, when he finally found another golden sphere, and so the young man quickly grabbed it, hoping for the best. The player found the S-rank passive known as Madness that would increase his final attack by 40% in exchange for reducing his defense to 80%. He was overjoyed despite the drawbacks, as the immense increase in attack suited him perfectly, and so he chose Madness as his defensive talent. Just like that, the young man obtained his second S-rank skill. The trial was finally over, but Piercing River wished to obtain an SS rank talent. The system then congratulated the young man for being the second player to complete his trial, giving him 1 talent point, 1,000 points of reputation, and 5 free stat points. But what followed left the young man speechless. His S-rank talent Madness was upgraded to the SS rank talent Dominant, in addition to 1 luck point for getting an SS rank skill, leaving the young man overjoyed by the generosity of the system toward his second place. With that, he was teleported back to his world. And so Piercing River returned to the underground cave. Han decided to look at this new talent. His new SS rank passive would increase his final attack by 50%. This talent was perfect, as not only did it not nerf his defense, but it also gave him more attack than the S rank skill Madness, which wasn't inferior to the skill, sword god of the light faction. But Dominant turned out to be superior. Piercing River couldn't be more thankful to the system. He then remembered that he didn't pick up the loot left by the silver tier boss, a loot that looked promising. The level 19 assassin named God's Forbidden Zone, the first talent receiver, began to flex his A-rank talent called Swift, which granted him 30% more speed. The pretentious player stated that he would be happy to help anyone who needed it in the stream, as comments began to rain, cringing out the player that received an SS-rank talent to the point where he found the trickery of his class pitiful in front of raw strength. And now that Han had eaten, he was ready to get back into the game. And so Piercing River was once again in the Rat King's cave. His last mission was pretty lucrative, as killing the Rat King gave him 3 silver tier equipment and 50 silver coins. Our hero received the brilliant gold helmet along with the brilliant gold boots and the sword of the Rat King. But he couldn't help but notice that he needed to be at least level 25 to wield the sword and level 30 to just wear the boots, and still needed some more EXP before reaching level 20. Piercing River then decided to try out his new talent by attacking a bunch of nearby rats. With one swing of his sword, the young man was able to deal an astonishing amount of 11,487 damage, making all the pests instantly disappear, leaving the satisfied Dark Swordsman amazed. Piercing River then received a notification from the system proposing to make his achievement public in order to get 5,000 reputation points, which he immediately agreed to. Once the news was made public, all players were thrown into shock as it was hard for them to believe that a player managed to get an SS rank skill. But just then, a window popped up. It was Dragon soaring 10,000 miles congratulating him on his new talent. The protagonist thanked the man, who stated that if he didn't know him well, he would have accused him of being a spy for the game's developers. The man then proposed to the hero, who was being humble, to pay him a fair price in exchange for intel on how to get a high-ranked talent, a very tempting offer. And so he revealed to him how equipment is useless in trials and how he should focus on skills and class growth stars. Yet even with this information, getting the highest rank of skills is impossible, since it is challenging for beginners to get strong skills and to up their chances with passive stat bonuses. The player would also need the high growth stars of a rare hidden class. Lastly, even if the player is rich and can secure the first 2 conditions, it would cost lots of time and money, in addition to the fact that the highest rank is S rank since he isn't one of the first to enter the trial. And just like that, Piercing River earned himself a quick 100,000 yuan, leaving the young man baffled by his business partner's wealth. The man thanked the protagonist for his help, stating that he never paid attention to stars as he assumed that his friend must be pretty advanced. But the Dark Swordsman pretended to only have 4 stars since his 6 stars seemed exaggerated. And so Dragon Soaring 10,000 Miles posted an announcement that he is willing to pay a high price for a hidden class and even higher for a soul hidden class, with the price being negotiable. Since the announcement would cost 100 coins to air in the whole country, Han guessed that the man spent a fortune, seeing how 1 gold coin costs 7,000 yuan. The protagonist began to think that this concerned the white lie he told earlier. As he hummed up the call, the rich man stated that the growth star level of hidden classes is way too powerful. He also suspected that Piercing River was only trying to preserve his reputation by claiming to have 4 stars. When one of his allies asked him about the soul hidden class growth star level, this one was left impressed to learn that it was an impressive 4 stars. Raising the star level was now crucial, since it would impact the strength difference later on, which is why the wealthy man would only focus on getting a hidden class and even a soul hidden one if possible, instead of leveling up. And so the man's ally decided to ask the rest of the guild to collect information. An hour had passed since then, and our hero, now level 20, had completed his mission and decided to go back to his master in order to receive his reward. Shortly after, in the City of Darkness, Piercing River returned to his master's side. Daniel was startled and amazed by his student's unexpected attack power growth. His student, the Fallen, was now a level 20 bronze tier boss, but decided to keep his SS rank talent a secret from his master since he was unsure of his reaction. The speechless mentor couldn't comprehend how the protagonist's attack points, which were a mere 200, suddenly reached a hopping 750. But despite all, the teacher was still happy for his student and decided not to ask him about his talent and asked him instead about the equipment that he desired. This shocked the young man, as he got to choose his reward for the first time. The teacher affirmed once again that he would use all of his power to help his student grow. The thankful Piercing River asked the necromancer for a way to lower the required level on his newest sword, as he gave the sword to the dark magician, who judged the weapon befitting of his pupil. By completing his mission, the young man received 150,000 EXP points along with the C-rank item Gift Orb. With that, the young man reached level 21. As for the Gift Orb, it was proof of the teacher's care that lowered the required level of any silver tier equipment piece by 10. The protagonist couldn't be more grateful. The teacher advised him to use it immediately, and so the orb was used on the sword of the Demon Rat King, lowering its required level to 15. when suddenly an idea came to the dark swordsman's mind, and he asked his teacher if it would be adequate for him to use the power of the blessing orb in order to sophisticate his newest blade. The surprised mage wanted to know where his student obtained it, as it was more precious than the gift orb. So Han stated that it was just good luck. The dark magician stated that it was a brilliant idea, as it wouldn't be a waste to use this low-rank blessing orb to upgrade the silver tier sword, and so the orb was used on the sword of the Rat King. With that, the silver tier blade entered the gold rank. The difference in rank could be seen, as gold was superior to silver. The weapon's stats weren't out of the ordinary, but in the hands of the hero and his advantages, the damage would be considerably increased. Just then, the system informed him that he had become a silver tier boss, and his title had also changed. This left the player overjoyed, as his title was changed to the Dark Master, upgrading his stats. His description had also been updated, as he was now described as a despicable traitor of the light who aimed to master all of darkness with the help of his master, the Necromancer. Han was now sure to be a difficult target with his attack power. His new title also increased his final life points by 150%. Piercing River finally understood the power of the blessing of the demon god, as it only revealed its true power, rivaling resurrection after reaching a certain level. The teacher then began to flatter his student's talent and skills, but the student returned the compliment, which the proud Daniel clearly accepted. The Necromancer then stated that Piercing River's attack was high, but his defense and gear were pathetic, and that he should do better to aid the Dark City. This made the young man look forward to a new mission. The ruler of the city explained that unwanted adventurers had been spotted near his domain, and since they belonged to the rival faction, they shouldn't be left alive. The next mission was to terminate those players, a B difficulty mission that the protagonist immediately accepted. Although he didn't expect that kind of task, the young man was thrilled by the immense EXP that he would get by slaying players. The mission consisted of killing 500 adventurers in order to prove his pledge to the darkness, as mysterious rewards awaited him. But before that, the young man asked for elixirs. Daniel affirmed that he couldn't hand them over for free, or would agree to trade them with a 30% discount since he was trading with his pupil, a kindness that the young man immediately accepted. He took a look at the healing elixir, which would restore 500 life points each second for 10 seconds for 35 silver coins, and the life elixir, which had double the effects for double the price. The young man was left baffled at how high those prices were even with the discount, which meant that the life elixir originally cost 1 gold coin. This made it look more like a scam than a fair trade for the player, and with a heavy heart, he bought 5 life elixirs and 4 healing elixirs. With that, the young man went on his way. When a giant shadow in the sky caught his attention, it turned out to be a massive dragon. The Dragon Master on top seemed intrigued, piquing the curiosity of his ride. For a second, the Dragon Rider felt the presence of a dark, powerful aura, but he assumed that it was just a mere delusion, since powerful demons do not spawn in this area. The dragon proposed to investigate, but the rider declined, since their ongoing mission was far more important than wasting time hunting demons. As he watched the dragon fly away, the young man wished to ride one, but such amusement was only available in later stages of the game, when he suddenly noticed a figure hiding nearby. The player known as Infidelity Master, a trainee thief, had been discovered. The player couldn't believe his eyes, as Piercing River had become a silver tier boss. Seeing how the other player couldn't comprehend how he became a boss, Piercing River began to wonder about the player's next move, and so he called out the adventurer, stating how stupid he was for stalking him. This confused the trainee thief, as it meant that players could be something other than adventurers. This also made him speculate that Piercing River was in fact just a character in the game, but he quickly ditched this idea, seeing how he terminated over 100 players alone. And so Infidelity Master demanded an explanation from the protagonist, since the bounty on his head was enough to make one incredibly wealthy. But the protagonist immediately eliminated him with one swing of his sword. Being killed by a single attack that dealt almost 12,000 points of damage made the young man question the game itself. But he was more baffled to learn that this wasn't a special move, but a simple basic slash. And so he made Piercing River's coordinates public and warned everyone about his attack power of over 10,000, seeing how he was killed by a single blow. This threw the community into chaos, yet they weren't discouraged, as they were sure to take him out with sheer numbers. Naturally, the message being public also meant that Piercing River also received it. Seeing this, he immediately tried to run away, since the bounty on his head would make him a target for ambush. Even if the chances of facing someone with a scroll similar to the one he received at the start of the game were slim, it was still possible, and if so, it would be game over. 10 minutes later, the protagonist noticed a crowd had gathered. Many players assembled to face him, but things should turn out well for Piercing River if he doesn't face the army head-on, since it would be impossible for someone who didn't pass the talent trial to beat him. Sharp Blade Violent Storm asked Infidelity Master about their target's location. The thief speculated that the young man had fled, seeing how they were in the exact spot he terminated him earlier. And so he ordered the search to begin to capture Piercing River, supposedly the only player with a hidden profession. All were excited at the chance, and so the search began. The first defeated players gave their coordinates to the rest. making the commander-in-chief and his men charge into the murder scene. But just as they arrived, an eliminated player was signaled somewhere else, making the player in charge realize that their target decided to eliminate them one by one rather than facing them head-on. Sharp Blade Violent Storm also didn't expect the game to have such a huge map, as the current one and its nearby town could contain at least 10,000 players. And since the game hasn't been out for a week, most players are still in the newbie towns, and it would also be ridiculous to send 10,000 players to hunt down a single one. Piercing River was too powerful and too fast for the hunting party, making some speculate that he was a hacker. Sharp Blade Violent Storm was left speechless. In the end, he judged that this hunt was too dangerous despite spending a fortune on equipment capable of freezing the target for 10 minutes. Yet despite all the sacrifices made by the guild, since the Dark Swordsman was attacking them individually, there was a high chance of them still losing to him. Meanwhile, the protagonist kept on slaying players with one strike of his sword. The enormous EXP received from dead players allowed him to quickly reach level 22. But just as he had slain 500 players, the system informed him that this massacre was spotted by the Light faction, who would return in a week in order to take back the City of Darkness. This notification was received.
That's it for today's Epic Manhwa recap. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update.